We've gathered here today to commemorate and celebrate the life of Frida Bat Moshe Aaron and Malka Shendel. One of the Psalms that we read on Shabbat is a concise but accurate description of our mother, mother-in-law, and most famously, Frida Neuman. Mi ha'ish shechafetz chaim, ohev yamim leratov, nitzor lashonche meira, usvatecha midaber mirma, sur meira b'yasei tov, ake shalom v'rotfehu. I'd like to do a stylistic interpretation as it applies to Bubby. How does the person who savors life live? They appreciate each day and see the good in it, and the people they meet. They speak with caution, they avoid the bad, and engage the good, and they value peace. I've known Bubby for over 50 years, although she wasn't Bubby when I first met her. While we know that sons-in-law are supposed to have conflicts with mothers-in-law, I can honestly say that I don't remember ever hearing her get angry with anyone. And accordingly, she was loved by almost everyone who knew her. You know, it didn't have to be that way. Having endured the horrors of Auschwitz and surviving with 3 brothers and a sister, but losing everybody else, she had every right to be angry and even hostile. But she wasn't. I think she channeled those emotions instead of into anger, into helping other people. For as we know, anyone who came to their home who needed something received more than they expected. And when she was no longer able to maintain her own home, they had her mail forwarded to our house, and we still get more mail for her than we get for ourselves. She was small in stature, but generous in nature. Even though she and our father-in-law lived alone in a small apartment, they bought an oversized house because it gave them the opportunity to host community events in their large basement, as well as enabling us to celebrate many family smachot there. A major testament to the quality of life she lived can be seen in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that she raised. And she did raise them with a strong but gentle hands-on involvement. Dementia is a cruel adversary. It robs both the victim and the ones they love of last years filled with celebratory memories. Sadly, Bubby was afflicted with it for the last few years. But even though her confusion was so great that she often thought I was Elimelech, imagine that, there were moments where her true character came through. Several times in the fog that she lived in, and it left her speechless, she nonetheless would reach out and try to share the food she had with her caretakers, whether family members or one of the amazing women who we had to take care of her. Speaking of her caretakers, you know, it's a very, very hard job. We talk about a mate mitzvah as a mitzvah for which the recipient can't reciprocate. But caring for somebody in her condition was very similar to that. The conditions Bubby lived through were very difficult. And Bubby was pretty much unable to reciprocate or even verbally acknowledge their work. But you know, almost every one of the people who came to care for her built a bond with her. And every one of them has been in contact with the family even long after they left to ask about the welfare of, as they said, Bubby. And there's no way to adequately thank you, the current caretaker, Jennifer Lambert, who has cared for her like a sister. Thank you. And you might not know this, but Jennifer is a bit of a philosopher as well. And she says when you look through a cemetery, you see many stones that have a from date and a to date, but there's a dash between them. And she says we can't forget the meaning of the dash, because that's where the life was lived. And that's how we feel about Bubby. Bubby had a silent but present chen, a grace about her. Other treasured people we want to thank are Dr. Grindblatt, and Shirley Matzliach for their intensely personal attention that they gave to Bubby. However, we know that care like that is symbolic of how they treat everyone in the community. So we thank them for all they do for all of us. So we have been fortunate to have lived and grown in Bubby's shadow and had her as a role model and example. We love her and will miss her, but we will do our best to keep her best alive in all of us. I'd like to close with a message from one of her grandsons, our son Yoni, who's about to embark on Aliyah. He wrote this morning, "Bubby was a very loving, generous, strong, and resilient woman. She got to live a long and accomplished life against all odds. It's so sad to have her gone from this world. And it's also so sad that her mind failed before her body. But I am full of sweet memories of growing up in her house and the apartment before that, with sleepovers in the den and long afternoons on the rocking horse, among other memories. Through her own actions, her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren, she made a lasting and positive mark on the world. I will always try to remember her as she was in her prime, peeling potatoes behind the kitchen counter, listening to the news on the radio while I munched on rugelach at her kitchen table. We will miss her."
Obviously, this is a very sad and tragic time for our family, for friends, for anyone who knew Bubby. But I believe that we have some sort of gratitude and comfort in the fact that she was likely to live a very long life and a very fulfilled life and create a beautiful family, great grandchildren, and future generations. I want to share just a quick few thoughts about who Bubby was. She went through the Holocaust. She came to America with nothing. She worked hard, almost 80, many years, to be able to support their two daughters and eventually all the grandkids. And they never stopped helping out throughout the years. I always said, we like luxury nowadays. Everyone likes nice houses and nice things. Bubby and Zadie were thrifty on themselves so they could help others. We should all be able to learn from that, to take away from our personal luxuries to be able to give it over to others. Bubby will be missed. We'll miss her contagious laughter. Anyone who knows Bubby or spent a meal with Bubby, once Bubby got laughing, the entire room started laughing and filled with joy. And I always wonder, I'm like, why is Bubby so happy all the time? She went through such a rough experience and sacrificed so much. And the answer is because she didn't need anything. So anything she had was happiness. We'll definitely miss her mandelbread and the rugelach that were always prepared. Anytime anyone would come visit Bubby, there was always something there for us. And there's obviously a lot more to be said about Bubby, but I'm going to keep it short. We're going to miss her very much. And we've learned a lot of lessons from her. And I hope we could adapt into our own lives and give comfort to my mother, to Aunt Marlene, and to everyone else. And you don't know it. How do you say the last name? It should be, I don't, how do you?
Bubby, we had a Bubby, and now we're without a Bubby. But at MS we have a Bubby. Your generation is why we're all here today. In this past week's Sedra, we learned Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We know in Rabbi Kiva, who had a lot of Yisurin, and he ended his life, his neshama went out with the word Echad. And he was Myrich, he lengthened the word Echad. And the Nesiv Shalom asked, why did he lengthen the word Echad? Why didn't he wait to V'chol Nafshecha? V'chol Nafshecha is Mesiris Nefesh. And the Nesiv Shalom answers that V'chol Nafshecha is a tzivoy on certain mitzvahs that person to have Mesiris Nefesh. Aber Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad is the way a person is supposed to live. That's the way a person is supposed to live, that he realizes that everything in the life is from Hashem. And the Nesiv Shalom says, why do we learn Shema Yisrael v'ahavta after the 3 weeks, after hard times? And the Nesiv Shalom says that after a person goes through difficult times, after Klal Yisrael went through shvara times, Klal Yisrael has to make a new Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shamayim, a new Kabbalah's mitzvahs. The Yidden, the Muhammadic Yidden, when they came after the Muhammad, it was Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, it was Hanaya v'ahavta. They made, for our generation, a new start, a new haskalah. Nachamu Ami. The first nechama was that they survived, and the second nechama was that they built our generation. But from the time we were little, you were Meiser Nefesh to watch us. You took care of us every day. There were times you even walked to our house to watch us, and you always made sure that when we came, we had the best breakfast or the latkes Erev Shabbos. And you were always looking for ways. I remember one time when you stayed by me in Eretz Yisrael, you didn't want me to say over the story, but I lived in an apartment where the washing machine was in the bathroom, and the washing machine was between the toilet and the sink, and it opened from on top. And when it used to run, it used to bang. And you knew I would resist you, but you came up with a way to get me a new washing machine because you looked for ways to help us. Baba, you were zeicha to have daughters, son-in-laws, einekloch, that were meiser nefesh to take care of you, day in and day night, looking for ways, going out of their way to be able to help you. Baba, when you go before the Kisei HaKavod, Bet Rachamim for Klal Yisrael, Bet Rachamim for your mishpacha, for your daughters, for your son-in-laws, and for all your einekloch, that everybody should be zeicha to use their kaiches to do Ratzon Hashem. Will be a mavas of netzach.
Just want to take a few brief moments to share some fond memories of my Bobby, of our Bobby. As a host, you know, I have great memories, as we all do, of being greeted at the door by Bobby and Zadie with hugs and kisses. And if you heard the door unlocking first, you know it was Zadie. But if you heard the step stool being dragged next to the door, it was Bobby, because that was the only way she was going to be able to see who was there. But we would celebrate so many simchas, so many holidays with Bobby and Zadie as a family, usually in the basement or in the backyard with kids playing everywhere. And neither Bobby or Zadie were really ever the center of attention. They never, to my memory, made a speech or any kind of public pronouncement. They weren't those type of grandparents. They never commanded any kavod, any attention to themselves, as far as I remember them. They just got so much enjoyment and so much nachas from having us, and just simply from bringing the family together. Of course, as we all do, we know Bubby for the food, for her famous potato kugel, for her rugelach, for mandel bread, for her egg noodles that she would make for the chicken soup on Pesach, and her cooking down there in the Pesach kitchen. It was very memorable to me. And when I slept over, it was usually a fresh bagel that Zay would walk to the bakery and bring a fresh bagel with lox and cream cheese and a slice of cucumber or a shtickle pickle, as Bubby would always say. And the soda was always 50-50, which is a citrus grapefruit flavor that you probably haven't heard of. I think it's been discontinued. But I remember that very well. And of course, Bubby was an exceptionally loving grandmother. She loved when we would call and talk to her. She always was so cheerful, always wanting to hear about us and take an interest. We would sleep over. Sometimes she would babysit. And if I woke up early or woke up in the night as a young kid, it was the eeriest thing, because you didn't have to wake her up. You could just stand in the doorway right outside. And she just somehow knew and would wake up. Never once heard her complain about anything or say anything negative at all. The only thing that I remember her taking something of a strong opinion on was that if we were going to play sports in the basement, we should put on socks. It gets very cold. You might get sick if you don't wear socks in the basement. And we played a lot of sports in the basement. And they would, come to our sport events, basketball games or soccer games in the heat. They would always, Bubby and Zadie would both make sure to be there. We would sometimes, when we were there, play games together, which are very special on Shabbos or Yontif afternoons, or during the week. We would play Rummikub together. Bobby loved to play Rummikub. We would play Milborn, which is like a French card game about driving, which was always very ironic because I don't think Bubby ever had a driver's license or drove. It's my understanding that there was an attempt made at some point, but it did not go well. Didn't play to her strengths, I guess, as a smaller person. Even though she was short, she was incredibly tough, and I just remember her being such a strong but positive person, but very strong. She would grate pounds and pounds of potatoes by hand for kugel. I don't think anyone does that anymore, but that Bubby used to do it. And of course, as Yang said, her laughter was incredibly special, and I have great memories of her just losing it, laughing to the point of coughing and crying. And it wasn't even about anything funny, and it was with Sim or, something not even particularly funny. But when Bubby got going, she brought so much joy and such a great smile to our faces. And I think we all remember Bubby's special laugh. We could really tell how much she loved her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, how much nachas she got from us. And of course, we loved her very, very much. We're going to miss her so much. We love you, Bubby.
I just wanted to give a chorus at Toiv. I really can't speak. A chorus at Tov to Dr. Greenblatt. When you say over B'chol Nafshecha, the Messiah's Nefesh that he went Lifnei Meshuras Adin to go 3 to 4 times in the hospital to make sure that she was taken care of, to fight with the nurses. The nurses said, "What are you doing? There's no life left in her." Fighting the nurses, fighting the hospital. Mamish B'chol Nafshecha. Coming over to the house so many times during the night when we had shilas with her, and then he would send Rabbi Matzliach. It's just not describable. She was like a rose that never wilted. She was just nice and chain, no matter how much she went through in her life. From when she was smaller, how many times she was taken away by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam. Dropped off, walking home miles and miles and miles with her mother and her children and her other siblings. And you never saw it in her face. She was always so besimchatik. She was makabel. She was makabel yisum b'yahava with simcha. And she was zoiche l'doire doires. Of Yidden was kinderlach was sitzen and learning Torah. Was going the Darkei Hashem Yisborach. It's very difficult to speak. There's so much to say. She was Zoicha for Arichis Yomim. And she used her Arichis Yomim to be nice and to her whole mishpach and to always give. Constantly giving. And nish vazich, never for herself, always for Yenim. I also wanted to thank her caregiver, Jennifer, who devoted a year of constantly watching Bobby, taking care of her. Lifnei Meshura Sadin. Constantly making sure if there's an infection, telling us we should call the doctor, maybe she should go and call Atzola. Basically trying to keep her alive all these months that she was so sick. I'm sure Zadie's here now to be makabel upon him. Her father, her mother, all her sisters who were killed in Auschwitz. To makabel upon him, Zan. She has a passport. The passport's on her arm. She has a passport, Glai Haran in Genedem, of what she went through. She should be a Melitz Yosha for the ganze Mishpacha. She should go up to the Kisei HaKavod. She should beit us by the Rabbeinu Shalom. I believe that the Rabbeinu Shalom, Shikshem Mishiach, the Tzoras, also viel Tzoras. Ein Zora noch der zweite Zora. Wie viel kann man Seuvel sein? Beit us for the ganz Klal Yisrael. Rabbeinu Shalom should help. Mashiach soll kommen, gleich kommen. Ila Mavas Lenetzach, Vidime, Mochak Dime, Mal Kolpanen. Everybody should say,
So just on behalf of Sim and the kids, there was a town in Eretz Yisrael. It was known to be the strongest town around. The most powerful, mighty town of Beitar. The Rambam in the halachas of Tanios, when he describes and goes through the list of things that happened throughout the Churban of Tisha B'Av, which we just passed, he describes in great length the capture of the city of Beitar. The city of Beitar had hundreds of thousands of Jews. It's always interesting to me that we commemorate the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva that died, but we don't have a special time to mourn Aruge Beitar. But the Rambam puts it together with the destruction of Beis Hamikdash and Tisha B'Av. The Gemara says an interesting story about the city of Beitar and why it got destroyed. The Gemara says that it got destroyed because of a wheel of a wagon. There was a minhag in the city of Beitar when every boy or girl were born, they used to plant a tree, cedar tree, an extremely tall and mighty, strong tree. And over the years, once a tree grew, they used to cut it down, and when the children get married, the boys' tree and the girls' tree were used to stand to hold up the chuppah when they got married. The story that the Gemara describes really was the fundamental yesod of every Jewish home, where it's founded on emunah b'tochen. It's planted way before. And that's how our precious special nation, Klal Yisrael, and every child grows and continues to build their homes later on. There was one mistake that was made, and it's a question that is constantly brought up for those who survived the Holocaust. Why didn't they stand up and fight? That mistake, the Mefarshim explain, was the same mistake that brought down Beitar. The Gemara says that the daughter of the Caesar passed by and her wagon broke down. And they needed a cedar tree, they needed a piece of wood to fix the wagon, and they fixed the wagon. And they cut down one of those trees that were planted for one of those Jewish boys or girls. And once they did that, the strong men of Beitar went out and beat them and scared them off and fought with them. And because of that, the Caesar later on sent out to destroy the city. Strength is not defined by physical strength, but by spirit. And I think that that's something that is so incredible for both Bobby and Zaidi. To raise a family after such terrible churban, when they had nothing. We were zoiche last night that Sim spent those moments at the hospital when Bobby was nifter. And Sim put me on the phone, and we said vidui, and we also made a mention of a poem that is said by the Ibn Ezra, L'cha Elish Teshukasi. And in there, I always wondered, it says how a person praises Hashem for every single part that he has in his body, the kilyois and the skin and the bones, because the truth is that there are moments we are lucky not to have that. But there are moments that even that was a miracle to have. And that's what Bobby and Zadie went through. They had nothing but barely skin and bones. And yet they knew it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they dreamed on. Who would have imagined? I don't think Bobby would have ever imagined at certain points in her life in Auschwitz that she will have a granddaughter sitting next to her by her passing. And that she would be zoichet to have such children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that are living through that example of such pleasant simplicity, the huge smile and laughter that she had. They're an example of taking their hometown, that tree that was rooted back in the Haim, take that chinuch and bring it back home with all the struggles of pre-war, which she used to tell us all about. A Yesoima, with traveling and poverty, and during and post the war, to carry it further, to create a beautiful generation of Torah observing family, proud Jews, Meiser Nefesh for Chinuch, for Torah, for Eretz Yisrael, each in their own unique way to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. And I think that that's something that when I came and became part of this family, I noticed both Zadie and Bobby were so pleasant and so nice and so happy with every single one of their grandchildren, with his or hers unique characteristics and koiches. And I think that that's something that we can all take further on and for the rest of our life. Each one of the grandchildren, of the great-grandchildren, being a better person and taking that rooted trees, not just in the physical sense, but spiritually and with our emuno b'tochen for the rest of our life. U'moch Hashem dima me'al kol panim.
On the left side. On their left, your right.
was young.
Water, cold water.
I mean, so far so good. I doubt each time I went to the coast. I guess it's my shirt that it didn't happen when you were laid.
It's been like kind of a weird summer, you know. First I was down and then I was in the hospital. Whatever, you know. I was lucky it wasn't school time because I had no, I had no limit to how much I could be there. I mean, except they limited, the hours, but it was much easier than during the
That's
school.
all right. When I was there, I told my daughter wanted me to stay another week, and I said, because it was the summer,
Yeah.
I was able to.
Do something.
Like that's also timing. Also has. I drove myself before I was scared to get it, but I figured it out.
You what?
I drove myself.
Oh,
I figured it out. Made it in just Matthew. Matthew was able to make it in. Was it?
Actually, 3 kids came, they took a 6:30 flight.
Oh, wow.
They happened 12:30 last
I mean, your
night.
sons.
And then 2 sons came in 11:30 flight. So. And then 2 more were going to come for Shabbos. Yeah, it's a Shabbos.
We're trying to figure out if it's the right thing or the wrong thing to go into.
There's a bucket of water right on the other side of the couch.
It's really good though.
Should I do it now? I don't know. אל מלא רחמים, שכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, על כנפי השכינה, במעלויס קדושים וטהורים, כזרע רקיע מזהירים, אס נשמס פרידה בס משה הרוין שלחה לעולמה בעבור שאנחנו מספללים בעד אסכוס נשמסה בגן עדן תמנוחסה לכן בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בססר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצבא חיים יש נשמסה אדוני יונחל עשה ושנוח ושלום על נשכבה ונאמר אמן.
יכול לגבר למכה פולחונה נחרוי מירה ולעשה בפולחונה דשמיא ויעשה וימלך שבריחו ומעשה בקורי יצמח וקנה וקורא בשיחי בחיי חיים ובחיי ובחיי בכל בית ישראל בגולה וזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יסברך וישתבח וישמע וישרמה וישנעשה ויסעדה ויסעלה ויסעלול שמי בקודשה בריחו ובלמין כל בחסה ושירסה תשבחסה ונחמסה דברם ובא ויאמרו אמן. שלום הרב מן שמאי ובחיים טייב מלאנו ועד כל ישראל יאמרו אמן. ויעשה שלום במימיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועד כל ישראל יאמרו אמן.
If we can have a shur, the women should make a shur leading away from the grave. Just turn around and face each other.